I also want to offer my condolences to each and every one of you, because I know he held a very special place in each one of your hearts. I know, as I sit down for a minute, that many of you here today view him as family, and I think that is a beautiful thing. I also know that Taylor shared a different part of himself with each one of you that was different from the other. What I know and choose to share with you today as his mother is the beautiful, big-hearted, and loving soul that I gave birth to on June 27th, 1990, which just so happens to be the same day that I fell in love for the first time in my life. I've prepared a short narrative of Taylor's life as I saw it, and I'm dedicating this story to Ashby. I've gotten through some of my hardest times in public with laughter, so we're going to try to do a little bit of that. Taylor was the second grandchild to his Nana and Pa King after his Uncle Brian and Aunt Tracy brought another girl, Kelsey Owens, in July of '83. Taylor was the first boy born on Nana's side in 50 years, and he was the only boy of his Pa King's offspring, considering that poor man could only produce females. It was because of this, and hearing all of his female-related stories over the years, that I not only gave Taylor the middle name of Allen after my dad, but I also gave him the King last name to carry. And for that, he was truly grateful. Taylor immediately became one of the greatest gifts our family would ever treasure. And of course, his mama treasured him like no other, especially considering he was my little survivor, because when all this began, I was carrying twins. His Nana and Pa King found an even greater joy in their lives, as his Nana would soon become his nanny in their home, at which time his Pa King was working from home, so they got to watch him grow. Sometimes more than his mama did, since she was a single mom left solely to support them, which actually proved to be no problem. If there was anything that little lad lacked, love was never on that list. His biological father, Richard Charles Manning, truly missed out on probably one of the most amazing gifts that he had a part of. In spite of that,
Oh, it's right under your seat.
okay. In spite of that, Taylor was flooded with true and honest love from his Nana, his Pa King, his three aunts, Tracy, Amy, and Jera, and his cousin Kelsey, that he really never seemed to fill the void that I know so many do under these circumstances. You better hold it together, girl. Taylor truly was adored by all, and when he was old enough to reciprocate that love, he truly did so. Taylor was just about 1 year of age when he got to wear his first white tuxedo to his Aunt Amy and Uncle Rob's wedding in '91. He was one of the highlights and picture props at their wedding. No matter what wardrobe that child wore, I was constantly hearing great compliments on what a beautiful little girl I had, even if he was dressed in a baseball uniform. Taylor was a busy child that kept all of us on our feet, especially his Nana, when I worked sometimes 7 days a week, if that's what it took to give us the best life possible. But he had his Aunt Jera and his cousin Kelsey at that time, to which he grew a very special bond to both. He had a curious and inquisitive nature, but preferred to observe rather than ask questions, like his mother. He was very sensitive and observant and quite adaptable, yet somewhat of a chameleon at times. He would play Legos in his room for hours on end before he ever walked. When Taylor was 4 is when Matt Snyder came into our lives. Matt was the brother and dad to Taylor. He taught him how to fish, ride a bike, play football, baseball, basketball, and more. When Matt joined our family, Taylor got a Mimi, Matt's mom, and a Papa, Matt's stepdad, another uncle, Uncle Mike, and his wife, Aunt Carrie. And then along came his cousins Grayson and Cade. We always spent birthdays, Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas with the Snyder family. As a matter of fact, it was Matt that helped Taylor gain his first set of stitches on his perfect little forehead on Christmas Day when he was 5. They both were pretty proud of themselves. After all, he had his first bruiser. And I realized I may possibly be looking at being a single mother of 2. If that wasn't bad enough, he quickly became bored with the bike and advanced to skateboards and rollerblading. Matt, more or less anything with wheels. Some of our favorite times were the monster truck shows, but he also had a huge love for animals, going to his first circus when he was 6 weeks old. Anything from dogs, turtles, frogs, lizards, birds, insects of all shapes and sizes, including but not limited to doodlebugs. I don't think there was any pet sold at the pet store that child didn't talk me into buying for him. But a story I will never forget is the iguana that he had for 2 weeks, that he was running through the yard in Nan and Pa King's. The lizard bounced off his shirt, ran under the fence, and he got only the tail. True story. That was about $100 down the drain. The King family had Sunday football at Pa King's with Taylor's favorite bowl of chili, Super Sunday, let me try that again. Super Bowl Sunday, and he loved Pa King's gumbo. Many, many days of simply being together for the family barbecues. Taylor would go plant flowers with his Nana in the spring, and she loved taking him to eat and shop. In '97 is when we gained 2 more cousins from Uncle Robin and Amy, and that's when Evan and Madison, a set of twins, came into the family. But in '98, when Taylor was only 8, his Uncle Brian lost his young life at the age of 40. That was a pretty tough pill for him and all of us to swallow. But within the year is when he was 9, he was over the moon to learn that he was getting a sibling, and Matt was officially taking on the role of his dad. However, the week of our wedding in my 2nd trimester, we would learn the devastating news that his little sister with Down syndrome was not strong enough to survive. It was a bittersweet time, but 5 days later, I walked down the aisle and we chose to fully enjoy the blessings that we had in spite of it. That same year, we would also get to finally leave the apartment life and move into our very first home. We were, of course, only 10 minutes away from Nan and Pa King. We had some awesome neighbors, and Taylor would be meeting a whole new group of friends. From Casey to Uten, Crocker, Zach, and the list goes on. He finally had room to play as many sports as he wanted, shooting basketball out on the street, playing football, So fast and furious that one day when he had his eye on the ball, instead of the mailbox in front of him, well, they collided and Taylor won. He would soon fall in love with skateboarding, while Matt built him ramps and poles to jump over and send me inside many times knowing there was another trip to the ER. Taylor was more frustrated that he had to stop fun long enough to get stitched up than ever having to worry about the pain that came along with it. So back to Taylor's love of pets. He would soon get the pet of his dreams on April 6th, 2001, when his favorite pet, Brett Ashby McGuire Snyder, came into this world. Although that pregnancy proved to be about 10 months of pure hell on his mother, the gift that our little family was blessed with, that is a memory I will forever cherish. Taylor truly was on cloud nine. As a matter of fact, all three of us wanted to name him, which is why Ashby has more names than your average Joe. Taylor giving him McGuire, after Mark McGuire. Our entire family fell in love with Ashby just like we did Taylor. Taylor was an amazing big brother to Ashby. Not only was he very protective of himself, but of Ashby and all those that he loved and cared about. He truly wanted to be right beside me and lend any hand I needed at all times, even bouncing on him on his little shoulder while Ashby screamed at the top of his lungs with colic. But Taylor never complained. It was like I had the role of his mom, but Taylor officially took on that role of big brother. He would write me cards telling me he knew I was stressed, but he was there to help me if I needed him. Now that we had a yard for a real dog, is when Taylor, or real pet, I'm sorry, you're not a dog. You're not a dog. Now that we had a dog for a yard for a dog, is when Taylor got the famous Jasmine for Christmas in 2002. He was in love with Jasmine, and everyone that met her fell in love just the same. It was just 2 weeks later, when Jera and Nick married, that Nicholas came along along that same time at the end of the year. Our family and friend circle was growing bigger by the month, it seemed. Those days in Atascocita were some of the most fun-filled days of laughter, memories, holiday celebrations, football, basketball, baseball, UFC fights on TV, and even in my living room. Because I had a house full of testosterone, and they all thought they were going to be the next McGregor. It was our home that all the kiddos would come to ride skateboards, play sports, jump on the trampoline, and throw persimmons across the fence at the cars passing by, swim, huge birthday parties, where we would have bounce houses for Ashby, carnivals set up in the backyard, and Matt was always standing at the grill, cooking enough food to feed all the kids and adults that wanted it. By this time, we had 22 members in our King Circle. When Taylor was 16, he got his first job at a barbecue joint in Atascocita, and then he managed to go from restaurant to restaurant a little bit, server and bartender when he was of age. He fell in love with the service industry and not only loved taking care of all his customers, but they truly loved him as well. He was the hardest worker and rarely went without a job. When Taylor was 18 is when I would become a single mom again to him and his brother. Within that year, we would end up back in an apartment for a little while until I could get on my feet and rent us a little 3-bedroom house in the general area. I found this little rent house and I asked Taylor to meet me there after he got off work. He parked on the street, all the neighbors were out in their yards, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "What the hell, Mom, is this a crack house?" I just waved and grabbed him by the shirt sleeve, thanked him for giving the neighbors a good impression before we ever signed a lease. And I said, "If you want out of that cramped apartment, we're going to have to take what we can get for us." But what it was, there were sheets hanging in the window while the owner was painting. But when I learned he was willing to even reduce the rent if we would move in, he agreed to do so. He ripped out all the carpet, put wood floors in for Taylor's asthma. He gave me a brand new kitchen to cook, you know. Before long, all of the kids' friends followed us to our new home. The backyard was full of holes from the previous, so we all managed to twist our ankle a time or two, but we had a big yard for a trampoline. We had a street for a basketball goal, and we had a garage for all the friends to hang out in. He knew to always let me know when he was home safe after closing the restaurant at 2 a.m. So he would always wake me and many times drag my butt out to the garage to hang with all the friends from 2 a.m. to sometimes half the next day. Of course, Ashby would sometimes be awake or not, but he would seem to be. We had so many great times in that house the 6 years we were there. Everything was back to normal. Taylor started spending a lot of time with his Uncle Nick when he was quite young. He would go spend the night with Jara and Nick on the weekends here and there, and then when he had time away from work, he would drive out and stay at Nick's. That's when the Hall family became a welcome extension to his family, and he was very welcomed into their homes. And as anyone would know it, they all fell in love with him years before he officially moved away. It was his 22nd birthday when he left to spend it with his Uncle Nick and all of the Hall family, and he essentially never came home, except to get his things and move in with Nick. This is also about the age that he met Erica. Where are you, Erica? Oh, sweetie. Sorry. Hey, Erica. Okay, Erica. He brought her to my home on that Thanksgiving the same year, and she fit right in. I was so impressed with this 18-year-old little girl that was standing beside me in the kitchen, helping me cook the meals, but even more so cleaning up my entire mess. She was the daughter I never had. I can honestly say we never had an argument or disagreement. She was a huge joy to have in all of the family, and I fell in love with her, and the family did the same. They were actually a perfect match. But she also took Ashby under her wing and became his big sister. Taylor and Erica ended up settling in League City a couple of years after leaving home so he could live life on the water. Ashby and I stayed in Atascocita a couple more years, but we were missing Bubba, so we decided to move closer to him, and we transplanted out here for about 3 years. In 2017 is when Taylor lost his Nana after a 17-year breast cancer battle. Then, of course, we just lost his Pawking, or Pawpaw, in August of this year. So, with all of this said, who is Taylor? Everywhere we went, I was sure to get a bit of an ego boost because he knew everyone in the area, and they all raved and said the similar things, that he was a hard worker, they loved his sense of humor, and what a big, beautiful soul. They asked, how on earth was I able to raise such a big-hearted, warm, compassionate, and caring young man? Taylor had a genuine love for all people without judgment. He was highly intuitive. When I took him to Disney World in Florida, when he was just 5 is when he was in his element at the beach and never looked back. He loved the Renaissance Festival since early childhood. He loved our road trips to Destin, Florida every summer, stopping off in New Orleans on the way, and of course even the casinos in Mississippi. He loved to fish, he loved all kinds of music and going to concerts. He loved to cook, whether it was in the kitchen or grilling. He taught his Aunt Tracy how to make the perfect margarita. He shared his love of music with his Aunt Jera, and Aunt Amy gave him the name Taylor. He was very compassionate and understanding, independent and original. He had a great knowledge of the world. He had the utmost respect and adoration for his grandparents, Jerry and Barbara King. His down-to-earth nature was apparent not only with his love of nature, but his happiest moments were never about material things or money, just being barefoot and fishing and being with his fur babies, Stella and Roxy. Stella pulling him around on his rollerblades. Taylor hugged Tracy 2 years ago, Christmas. She said he hugged her so tight and told her how great it was to be with family again, and that he loved the shit out of her and missed all of his King family. We were almost done, Millicent.
You said music.
His love for Wills never let up, as he sent me on November 30th of this year a picture of a motorized scooter to put on his Christmas list. He was a big kid with a big heart that wished no harm on anyone and wanted us all to just be happy and enjoy our lives, in spite of the fact that so many things, both known and unknown, were plaguing him. It was on December 11th, in the early hours, that we still don't know the reason for Taylor's early demise at the age of just 31. With that said, when I know the results of the autopsy, all of us will know. I made a promise to Taylor hours before he passed that he would not die in vain. And that is a promise that I will hold true. So, with that said, I know his Uncle Nick probably has something he would like to say. Would you like to come up?
No, I thought about it, and just like when you had asked me for a picture of the two of us, I couldn't really find them. The only
Well,
pictures I could actually find
somebody did.
were us back to back to see who was freaking taller. The only pictures.
But I know you have some wonderful memories.
And I realized that's because.
It's always
But I realized the moments we had together were between us and we
Perfect.
were there. And I was Billy,
Well, I'm sorry if I told too much of your business.
No. Obviously, we had a very special relationship, but I think I'd like to know the memories.
All righty. Well, I tell you, with that said, Linda has prepared a video that kind of goes along with what I've spoken today. And you ready?
I assumed you guys had it set up. I don't know what to do.
Oh, well, somebody was supposed to be doing that. I thought, where's your, there's the TV.
Okay, as long as I figure it out.